In the frozen forests of Siberia, where temperatures drop to -40 degrees Celsius and the nearest repair shop is 1,000 kilometers away, Russian loggers depend on trucks built in a small Finnish town most people have never heard of. These aren't ordinary lorries, they're Sisu Trucks, named after a Finnish word that has no direct translation in English, but means something like stubborn determination in the face of impossible odds. The same quality that helped Finland survive a winter war against the entire Soviet army now powers vehicles that refuse to break down when breaking down means death. For over 90 years, while British and European truck manufacturers built hundreds of thousands of vehicles for comfortable roads, Sisu has built a fraction of that for the worst conditions on Earth. They've never mass-produced anything. They've never tried to be the biggest. They've simply built what they promised and outlasted almost everyone who thought they could do it better. This is the story of how a specialised Finnish company became the last word in unstoppable trucks. The meaning of Sisu. To understand Sisu Trucks, you first need to understand the word Sisu itself. In Finnish culture, Sisu represents a kind of determined resilience that goes beyond ordinary courage. It's the quality that surfaces when everything seems hopeless, when logic says you should give up, but something inside refuses to break. The Winter War of 1939 proved what Sisu meant to the Finnish people. When the Soviet Union invaded with over 1 million soldiers, tanks and aircraft, Finland had fewer than 300,000 troops and equipment that belonged in a museum. The world expected Finland to surrender within weeks. Instead, Finnish forces held out for months, inflicting massive casualties on the Red Army while fighting in temperatures that froze diesel fuel solid. They used skis to outmaneuver Soviet tanks in the snow-covered forests. They turned every tree into cover and every frozen lake into a battlefield. When Soviet generals asked their troops why they couldn't defeat such a small enemy, the answer was always the same. The Finns simply would not break. Engineering for survival. That spirit of unbreakable determination is what manufacturer Suomen Autoteollisuus, the creators of Sisu, chose to carry above every cab they ever built. Founded in 1931 in Helsinki, before operations centred in the small Finnish town of Kaja, Sisu wasn't trying to compete with mass-market manufacturers like Scania or Volvo. They were building vehicles for customers who needed trucks that would keep running when everything else failed. The early Sisu trucks were basic, functional machines designed for Finland's unique challenges. Finnish winters weren't just cold, they were hostile to machinery. Ordinary trucks would freeze, fail to start, or break down miles from help. Sisu engineers understood that in Finnish conditions, reliability wasn't a luxury feature, it was a matter of survival. But a major breakthrough came in the 1950s, when Sisu formed a strategic partnership with British manufacturer Leyland Motors. This wasn't a hostile takeover or a simple licensing deal. It was a collaboration between engineers who respected each other's expertise. Leyland brought decades of experience building heavy-duty engines and commercial vehicles. Their factories in Lancashire were producing some of the most reliable truck engines in Europe, but Leyland engineers had never designed anything for -40 degrees or terrain that would systematically destroy conventional trucks. Sisu brought knowledge that couldn't be found in any engineering textbook. They knew how diesel fuel behaved when it turned to gel in extreme cold. They understood why ground clearance mattered more than cab comfort. They knew which steel alloys would hold up to thermal shock and which would shatter like glass. The partnership created something remarkable. Finnish heavy-duty chassis running Lancashire engines, designed by teams who worked together rather than in competition. Sisu engineers travelled to Leyland's facilities in England to study engine design and manufacturing techniques. Leyland engineers visited Kaja to understand how extreme conditions changed every aspect of vehicle engineering. By the 1970s, the collaboration had grown so close that Leyland Motors acquired a minority stake in Sisu. These weren't strangers doing business across international borders. They were colleagues solving problems that neither could tackle alone. The partnership proved particularly valuable when both companies began exploring turbocharged diesel engines. Sisu engineers were investigating turbocharged Leyland engines in real-world scenarios before the technology was fully mainstream. The extreme conditions in Finland provided a perfect testing ground, pushing turbocharged systems to limits that normal road testing could never achieve. But understanding Sisu Trucks means understanding what -40 degrees actually does to machinery. This isn't just a number on a thermometer. It's a physical reality that transforms every component of a vehicle into a potential failure point. At -40 degrees, diesel fuel doesn't just get thick, it turns into a gel that won't flow through fuel lines. Ordinary batteries lose up to 70% of their cranking power. Metal contracts and expands unpredictably, causing hydraulic seals to fail and joints to crack. Hydraulic fluid becomes so viscous that power steering and lifting mechanisms simply stop working. For a truck driver alone in a Finnish forest with no recovery vehicle coming, these aren't technical problems to solve later. They're life-threatening emergencies happening in real time. Sisu engineers designed their trucks to function in these conditions without compromise. Every Sisu truck left the factory equipped with fuel-burning heaters that warmed the engine block and vital fluids before startup. Instead of standard commercial batteries that failed in extreme cold, Sisu utilized specialized Arctic-grade electrical systems that maintained power at temperatures that killed ordinary vehicles. Ground clearance wasn't about looking rugged or impressive. It was about clearing fallen logs, deep snowdrifts, and jagged ice that would tear the undercarriage off a standard road truck. The high-mounted air intakes weren't styling choices. They were functional necessities for crossing rivers and deep snow without flooding the engine. Every component was selected and tested for reliability rather than cost. Sisu couldn't afford to leave anything to chance because there was nobody in a freezing forest to install what you forgot or repair what broke. Logging and legendary toughness. The demanding Finnish environment meant that every Sisu truck was essentially a prototype for extreme duty applications. While other manufacturers tested their vehicles on proving grounds and controlled test tracks, Sisu trucks were proving themselves in commercial service under the worst possible conditions. This real-world testing ground became the foundation for Sisu's expansion into specialized markets. If a truck could survive commercial logging operations in Finland, it could handle almost anything. The logging industry connection runs deeper than just building tough trucks. Finland's entire economy historically depended on getting timber out of terrain that would destroy an ordinary lorry. The country's vast forests represented enormous wealth, but only if the trees could be harvested and transported to mills and ports. Traditional logging trucks were built for roads. They worked fine on paved highways and maintained gravel routes, but Finnish logging operations took place deep in roadless forests where the terrain itself was the enemy. Sisu wasn't building trucks for roads. They were building machines for places roads hadn't reached yet. Their multi-axle logging trucks needed to navigate between standing trees on gradients that would roll over conventional vehicles. They had to cross streams, climb over fallen logs, and maintain traction on surfaces that ranged from deep snow to boggy marshland. The historical partnership with Leyland proved crucial for these early applications, providing the torque needed to pull heavy loads through difficult terrain. Sisu's chassis engineering distributed that power through drivetrains designed for continuous, brutal off-road operation. Finnish logging trucks became legendary throughout Scandinavia for their ability to operate in impossible conditions. Word spread to other industries and countries facing similar challenges. If you needed vehicles that wouldn't fail where failure wasn't an option, you called Sisu. This reputation led naturally to military applications. Sisu's expansion into defence wasn't just a sideline business. It was proof that the same engineering principles that kept logging trucks running in Finnish forests could keep armoured vehicles operational in combat zones. The military specification process revealed just how thoroughly Sisu had thought through extreme duty design. Features that seemed like overkill for civilian applications became essential capabilities for military use. The specialised sealing and cabin heating systems that prevented freeze-ups in Finnish winters also laid the groundwork for robust environmental and overpressure protection in battlefield conditions. United Nations peacekeeping forces began choosing Sisu-designed armoured vehicles, like the renowned XA series, for deployment to volatile regions such as Lebanon and the Balkans. They needed equipment that wouldn't fail where failure kills people. The rugged reliability that Finnish loggers depended on became a matter of life and death for soldiers and peacekeepers operating far from support bases. Sisu's military-grade vehicles featured protection systems designed by the same engineering culture that built the logging trucks. The sophisticated multi-wheel drive configurations provided mobility over terrain that stopped conventional military transports. The defence applications proved that Sisu's engineering philosophy scaled perfectly from commercial logging to international military operations without compromising the reliability that made their reputation. Perhaps the most remarkable demonstration of Sisu's specialised capabilities came in 2008, when the company completed a major delivery that seemed logistically impossible. Over 90 heavy-duty trucks and trailers delivered deep into Siberia to a Russian logging enterprise operating at Ust-Ilimsk in the Baikal region. This wasn't just an export sale, it was a Finnish company selling Arctic trucks to Russia in Siberia because nobody else made equipment tough enough for the conditions. The irony wasn't lost on anyone familiar with Finnish history. The same country that had fought the Soviet Union in the Winter War was now the premier source for vehicles that could handle Russian winters. Company leadership visited the customer in the Baikal region forest to understand exactly what they needed. The Russian operation was harvesting timber in conditions that made standard European winters look moderate. Temperatures dropped below minus 50 degrees. The nearest populated area was hundreds of kilometres away. Equipment failure meant production shutdowns that cost millions of rubles. Russian operators had tested vehicles from massive American, German and Swedish manufacturers. All had failed to meet the sustained operational requirements. Only Sisu Trucks proved capable of relentless operation in Siberian conditions. Today, over 90 years after the first Sisu truck rolled out of the factory, the company continues operating under the same core principles that built their reputation. While they navigated periods of state ownership and domestic corporate mergers under conglomerates like Partek and KONE, Sisu ultimately survived by returning to private Finnish hands, staying true to the engineering philosophy that made them famous. Build what you promise, and promise only what you can deliver. The factory in Karjar still produces trucks for customers who need vehicles that won't fail. The engineering teams still design components for reliability in extreme conditions. The testing procedures still ensure that nothing leaves the facility until it meets standards that other manufacturers would consider financially impossible. Modern Sisu trucks incorporate advanced technology and materials, but the fundamental design philosophy remains unchanged. The historic partnership with Leyland is a chapter of the past, but the collaborative spirit remains. The trucks rolling out of Karjar today combine Sisu's legendary extreme-duty chassis with state-of-the-art powertrains from Mercedes-Benz. They're built for operators who understand a simple truth. The cheapest truck is the one that never breaks down when you need it most. In an industry dominated by multinational corporations endlessly optimizing for global market share, Sisu represents something increasingly rare, a company that knows exactly what it does best and refuses to compromise on quality for the sake of infinite growth. The word Sisu still appears proudly above every cab they build, reminding drivers that they're operating vehicles designed by people who understand what it means to never give up, no matter how impossible the conditions become. That Finnish determination, forged in winter wars and proven in frozen forests, continues to power trucks that simply refuse to quit when quitting isn't an option.